This is an amazing time for creativity, specifically within commerce and any CMO looking to drive performance marketing and getting more out of what their current efforts are. You've seen a lot of CMOs shift into performance marketing for a variety of reasons. A lot of CMOs are feeling pressure for short-term sales results. Very few of them feel like they have the money needed to deliver on their CEO's expectations. So they push a lot into performance marketing. But what's interesting is it often orients a lot around media and media technologies, media placements, retail media networks, which is a good thing. But if you look at a lot of the studies that they do, one of our major CPG clients did a major study on what's driving incrementality within their media, and they found 51% of that incrementality is from the creative itself. That's a very common answer within plus or 5% margin points depending on who you're talking to, but it's often overlooked as part of that consideration set. And so Cannes is a perfect place to look at what is the creative's role, specifically in the performance marketing, especially as a multiplier on what is supposed to be accountable media.
Is there a danger in placing a little too much emphasis on a quote-unquote efficiency gains and performance is there a risk of eroding brand equity?
So I think there's a misnomer that performance marketing needs to be purely transactional and high claims, sales, price points, things like that. And it can't be brand building at the same time. We think that they can be both. And one doesn't have to erode the other. We just did a great campaign for Ziploc that had 9 shortlists so far, which is doing phenomenal. And it's a good example of both brand building and performance driving, and you didn't have to make that false choice of one or the other. The campaign came from the brand route. They were trying to move from food storage to food preservation. And so they found that, for example, if you store your strawberries in a Ziploc bag in your refrigerator, it'll actually last longer. So they came to us with a retail media brief saying we need to drive short-term sales results of Ziploc, help us go do that. And we had this great insight about the consumers that a lot of younger consumers have low disposable income as inflation and tariffs were starting to come in. They were really, really hurt by that. And they were really living off of coupons. And one of their biggest pain points was coupons expire. And we were like, well, if Ziploc stands for making food last longer, how can we make coupons last longer too? And so the idea was called Preserve Promos, where anytime you bought any food item with a coupon that was expired, as long as the Ziploc item was in the basket, Ziploc would honor that coupon itself and extend the life of it. So it's a good example. I mean, it's very performance driven, very much using retail media networks and short-term sales results, but had an amazing creative idea tied to the brand platform itself and had phenomenal results. So that's the type of work that we're seeing now, that a lot of CMOs are asking of, I need to do both, especially if most of my media is moving towards retail media, I have less dollars for brand building. Is there a way to be both brand creative and conversion driving at the same time?
The new Cannes Commerce category celebrates work that drives transactions. Again, there is that focus. How important is it that the industry finds a way to bridge the gap between performance and branding? Is that still something you need to drive home?
I think that's the thing that we're starting to see a major tipping point on, is that brands are starting to see that you can do both in that. And there's a lot of examples from it. I just shared the Ziploc example. Another great example is Kleenex. We did this for Kimberly-Clark. This is an Amazon brief, retail media brief, help us sell more Kleenex on Amazon. And you typically just go to your natural retail media solutions within Amazon, but if you looked at their broader network, they also had IMDb as part of their network. So like, well, what's a creative insight that can combine IMDb to Kleenex? And we thought, well, some movies make you cry, and you would need a Kleenex box with you. And so we created, working with IMDb, what we called the Kleenex score. So we had their own score just on how emotional or most likely this movie is to make you cry. And so therefore, if you're going to go rent that movie, you should probably add a Kleenex on your Amazon box together. Super fun, super creative, and we're seeing, I could go on to many examples like that where CMOs are starting to shift the perspective of, I need both. It's not an and or an or, they have to come together.
No offense to brands, but patience is not often a virtue associated with campaigns in retail media and other performance channels. So how do you help brands resist that pressure for immediate cultural relevance and instead try to encourage them to build a little bit more slowly? Is that possible in this day and age?
It probably is not possible. I think culture moves so fast, and I think brands need to learn to be agile. I think that's a core pressure most of them are on. They need to move fast with culture. But by the way, culture is a multiplying force on our brands. We can do so much with culture. Great example of that is with Oreo, which won a gold in audio, but it really was a commerce idea. And it was called Name This Oreo. We found this cultural insight that there was a secret language of how people were using Oreo to speak. So the black part of the cookie, they said O, and then the middle white part they called Re, and then they would make weird combinations of cookies. They'll be like O, Re, O, Re, O. It was really silly and stupid, and we're like, as a brand, you're like, what do we do with this? And we're like, well, the cookie itself is iconically visual, but it's not an iconic audio expression of that. And so we're like, can we go create a Duolingo-like app to teach people how to speak Oreo? And so, which was super funny, super irreverent, very tied to culture, but also it was conversion driving. So we did it with Kroger, using their retail media network. And so as you played the game, the better you were at learning to speak Oreo, you got bigger discounts on Oreos that you could go redeem at Kroger. So again, conversion driving at the same time, tied into culture. And we were not the first ones to do it. We weren't the ones that created that cultural trend, but we saw that trend and found a way to bring a conversion experience to it.